Okay, we'll talk about Geelong for a moment. They've declined. They've had a lot of injuries, admittedly, but 5 and 6, and you've identified an area of the ground they're not up to scratching, Kane.
Well, just the second-tier players or those players that were so strong for them and the role players last year. Now, there's some really good players on there, clearly, but the drop-off in their performance, and it is noticeable, particularly when the injuries are there to some of their star players and through the midfield. I mean, Stengel's an All-Australian, Stewart's a 4-time, Zach Tui's been a great player for a long time, Duncan's had his body issues. We'll get to De Koning in a minute, Lordo, but Rowan and Close and Stanley and Guthrie and Blixar's All-Australian last year, such strong performers in a premiership year, they have been exposed when that A-grade talent has been out injured.
Chris Scott's only 11 weeks from winning a premiership, or 11 games past winning a premiership. He had this to say after winning the flag a day or two afterwards.
Did you ask them straight whether they thought you were still the person?
Yeah, I did. Absolutely, and that's the relationship we've always had. And I made it hard for them. I said, if you have any doubt at all, you have to tell me.
He's a pragmatic person, Chris. So I feel like he's been there such a long time that if they were not to make the finals or bow out and straight...
Alistair Clarkson's become the industry cautionary tale, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He last flag 2015, finals a year or two after that, but really it just fell apart so dramatically. And I'm not just talking about these current allegations. And then, of course, Damien Hardwick. I mean, looking back, you look at the 2020, you think they didn't make finals in 21. That was probably the year to go. You get to the point where it's so bad and you think you've lost the connection to such a degree and you're so over the job that you quit mid-season. So I agree with you.
End of next year, you think?
Well, he's got another year on his contract, but this is his 13th year, as you say. There are clubs who are going to be looking for coaches at the end of the year, I reckon, certainly at the end of next year. I mean, we keep talking about the Gold Coast, which seems unfair, but I think clearly they're one target. Chris Scott is going to be one of the most eligible, coaches around. And I think that's a very, very interesting point that you made.
He's so calm publicly, even after a loss, and I admire that about him because he just has you at ease despite, the carnage on field. But I think he's panicking a little bit with the moves that he's making from a personnel and from a structural point of view. I can't believe De Koning's playing forward. This is a bizarre one for me. This is a kid who looked like he was going to take the competition by storm at centre-half back. You've already got Cameron, you've got Hawkins, you've got Henry, and now you've got De Koning, who was out of sorts. And I get he hasn't had the training, but this is what he was doing last year against Norton, and you thought this guy is one of the most exciting players in the competition. So there was that. The Henry brothers were swapping either end. Stengel was playing on ball, and the quickest way to disrupt someone's career is to throw them all over the place, and that's clearly what's happening to that young man. He's got to settle him back as an intercepting centre-half forward that every team would love to have.
Fact, yep.
I agree with that, Kano, and I think there's a big opportunity for Cody Waitman and Arthur Jones this week because this has become an issue for them too. Small forwards getting a hold of them. So, Jed Buse is on notice. I think O'Connor, Collar Jasny, those types who get these type of jobs, but it's becoming an area where at ground level they feel they can get Geelong in terms of leg speed.
Melbourne's starting to become a little bit of an asterisk in this season. They are not quite at their best, and they haven't been for quite some time. That's a record since that famous streak in 2021, which was franked in a flag. 13 wins and 10, ranked 8. Of course, it petered off last year, and they're yet to find full flight this year. Simon Goodwin.
The same way, Fremantle in the same round last year that led, and then there was the Entrecôte famous dinner with, where it all sort of fell apart.
Simon Goodwin is clearly frustrated.
But as I said, we sit here frustrated because you don't win a game of footy and you give yourself a chance to win a game of footy, but we just didn't execute with the ball. So we need to get better. That's where we sit at the moment, but we're frustrated. We want to be a team that wins. So we've got some work to do.
I just wonder, is he and the club worked out too easily? So you take away their strengths and they don't find another way to win. And I think that May and Lever in defence, if they play well, they often win. Or is Petrarca and Oliver and Gawn. But
is there a top-end team? Is there a top-end team as reliant on as few as them?
I don't think so, Hutch. And I think if his stock game is taken away and those big bodies through the midfield, or May and Lever have their strengths taken away. Their forward line doesn't score, so it's an issue for Simon. Again, he was worked out last year, and it looks like it's happening again.
And the former star player Luke Jackson, who left, did expose him in the ruck yesterday. And it is an interesting one. When he was given the time as the genuine ruckman, that's what he has done. And how many teams have won a premiership with 2 A-graders? We sort of had a look at the numbers, and there's a couple, but Jackson for Melbourne was just a young player making his way. So there's the decision for Fremantle. Reportedly, they're really keen to re-sign Sean Darcy as a free agent.
What's wrong with it at the moment,
year.
can I ask? Like the last month's
Well,
been
this, because Sean Darcy is a big
what's their record been
ruckman.
since the last 5 weeks?
It's been okay, Hutchie, but they haven't achieved a lot with this duo.
What have they done the last
And
month that wouldn't mark this as a success?
History would suggest that it is very rare to win a premiership with 2 A-grade ruckmen. And could you use the asset, which is Darcy, because clearly they've committed to Jackson for 7 years, to get yourself another A-grade midfield, because that is where I think they're lacking a little bit.
He plays as a midfielder, though.
Yeah, in the ruck, though, not as a forward.
Craig, the campaign is on in earnest. The coaches have got together, and if you listen to what coaches are saying over the last few weeks, it's no longer just subtle messaging and coaches saying they're frustrated and feel let down by the AFL. Let's listen to just a small group over the last week, starting out with the winning Fremantle coach, Justin Longmuir.
It's a difficult job when you step into it, so not asking it to be any easier. What we are asking is the AFL to step up and support us more. And that's not just senior coaches, it's all football department staff, and return the soft cap to the levels pre-COVID.
But, we have had, I think we're $2.5 million short of our soft cap where it was pre-COVID. And I guarantee the workloads haven't lessened.
Getting the soft cap, which is, it's sort of 72% of what it was in 2019 last year. Whereas the players are up around 107, which is great, and the AFL execs around 110. So all their salaries have got up, and I just think it's time to catch everyone else up now that the game is back in a good spot.
So the soft cap's only going up by $500,000 next year, according to the AFL. The clubs were shattered by that. The footy departments, I reckon they'll get another $500,000 off the back of this, and it needs to keep climbing.
So
not
you've
just
been
for the
part of
coaches.
this campaign. You've been pushing
I-
the barrow every week. You've been part of the media,
just
part
my
of the media
opinion.
pitch on this. You've been.
Don't you agree, Hutch?
I'm just wondering.
There's no organised media pitch. The coaches
How much money
sat
do you think
down-
it should be?
It should be back to where it was. It should be back to where it was pre-COVID. Gillan McLaughlin told the 18 coaches...
Can the game afford that $40 million?
At the pre-game meeting, of course it can. The game has never been in better shape. We're in financial rude health.
How much
and the
is
coaches,
it, Caro? How much pre-COVID would it be?
It's $40 million. It's
It was
2.5 by 18.
$9.5 million or something pre-COVID, and now it's at around $7. And they talk about money outside the cap, welfare, etc. But it's a joke. There are not
45.
enough senior, strong footy managers around, and they need better assistant coaches. They need more help. And I just don't understand why everyone else is getting pay rises bar the coaches.
Belief from the assistant coaches that the AFL doesn't rate the assistant coaches.
They don't.
Yeah.
They don't. But
It was used as a means to square up what they thought was a problem, and
the coaches are paying off the debt for the broke clubs. That's what they're
How
doing
can
at
you
the moment.
not rate assistant coaches? What does that mean?
That's the belief that
The
there's
Gillan
too
McLaughlin
many
view
of
is
them.
that names like Longmire and Scott and Hardwick and Clarkson should get all the big bucks, and the assistant coaches just, not that much money at all.
It's crazy.
Yep.